Yo, what up, guys? It's Max here, and today I'm going to be doing a 2017 first round NFL mock draft. I'm really excited. Put a lot of time into this. I think it's a pretty good board, actually. I just want to start off by saying so far it feels like every mock I've looked at is like super different. So I feel like this draft is really wide open this year, which makes it more exciting, but it also makes it harder to predict. But it should be really fun, so let's get into it. I'll show you guys. I wrote up on a whiteboard like my mock draft, so I'm going to be looking up a lot, so hopefully that doesn't bother you too much. So first pick overall, we all know is the Cleveland Browns, and it's like, what do you get for a team that needs everything? I think they're obviously a ways away, but they've acquired a lot of picks, so that's good for them. They definitely need them. And I think the obvious choice here is Myles Garrett, the defensive end out of Texas A&M. Everyone has him tabbed to the Browns. I know there's been some conflict within their organization whether or not to look at Trubisky there. And I could definitely see them trading up to get him. But I think the first pick should be Garrett 100%. I'm not huge on any of the quarterbacks this year, which I'll talk about later. So moving on, we got the 49ers. I've got them taking the defensive end out of Alabama, Jonathan Allen. It's kind of a toss-up between him and Solomon Thomas. A lot of people I've seen have been picking Solomon Thomas there, but I just like Jonathan Allen from Alabama playing SEC football, and I think he's a freak. Honestly, I think he could be as good as Garrett in the long run. Just explosive, so we'll see what happens there, but that's who I'm mocking to the 49ers. They, like the Browns, could use a lot. I have a quarterback, pass rusher, no line written down for them. But I think right now the best player available would be Jonathan Allen for them on this board. So moving on to the Bears, we have Jamal Adams is who I have, the safety out of LSU. They could use a lot, honestly. I mean, they could use some O-line help. I think they could use a tight end. But I think their secondary is what needs the most help. And it's a toss-up between Jamal Adams and Malik Hooker, in my opinion. But I give the edge to Jamal Adams just because of his elite speed. He had like a 4.33 at his pro day or something like that. Either way, I don't think you can go wrong with either of those safeties. But I think that is what the Bears need to address is their secondary. They got torched last year. And adding Jamal Adams would help a lot, I feel like. So moving on to number 4, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. They could use a lot as well. They could use a tight end, I think, offensive line help, or a running back, and I have them going with the running back at Leonard Fournette. This might seem a little high to some people, but I just feel like he maybe won't be quite Adrian Peterson, but he's pretty close. Like, I think he's about as next Adrian Peterson as you could get, a 3-down back, and the kind of guy that I think Tom Coughlin would love. So I have Leonard Fournette out of LSU going to the Jags. Number 5, the Titans. They could use some secondary help, maybe a wide receiver and some linebacker help, in my opinion, amongst other things. They actually are sitting pretty with 2 picks in the first round after their trade last year, and I'm guessing they didn't expect this pick from the Rams to be as high as it is, so they're probably pleasantly surprised. And I have them going in the secondary and picking Malik Hooker. I think he'd come in and be an instant playmaker for him. He's maybe still a little raw, but he's like an athletic freak. It's super rangy, so I think that'd be a great pick for them. Coming in at number 6, the Jets. They could use a lot. They're kind of scrapping their whole team, getting rid of all their veterans and starting over, basically. And what happens when you start over? You draft a quarterback, right? And so I want you to pause the video and type in the comments which quarterback you think I'm going to say, and then we'll see if you get it right. Because I think it's going to be different than what a lot of people think. So I'm not going with Trubisky. I'm going with Deshaun Watson. He's my favorite quarterback in this draft. I just think he has the most experience against big-time opponents and prime-time matchups, and Trubisky could be better in the long run, but I think Deshaun Watson is the best quarterback right now in this draft. He's a playmaker and he's a winner. So that's who, if I was the Jets and I was wanting to start my rebuilding process by taking a quarterback, I'd go Watson there for sure. A lot of people might disagree with me on that, but that's just my opinion. Moving on to number 7, we have the Chargers. And sitting here at 7, they're probably pleasantly surprised that Solomon Thomas has fallen to them. They do need a defensive end opposite Joey Bosa, I feel like, in that 4-3 defense. So I think they'll go ahead and select Solomon Thomas out of Stanford. He's another explosive guy. He could have honestly went number 1. He's that kind of talent. I think he's as explosive as Myles Garrett and Jonathan Allen. So I think he'd be a great pairing with Joey Bosa, and they'd be tears on the edge for that defense for, who knows, maybe 10 years. So moving on to the Panthers. They had a down year this year, but I think they're a lot more talented than the 8th pick overall and what their record shows. I think they could use some tackle help. I know they signed Matt Khalil, but I don't think he's very good. And they could use some defensive line help after losing, what's his face? Oh, no, wait, they added Peppers. Never mind. Well, still, I think they need some D-line help. But I have them going running back, which a lot of people might be surprised by. I have them going Dalvin Cook out of Florida State. I personally like Cook a little more than McCaffrey. I think he's a more true 3-down running back, whereas McCaffrey, I think, is more of... I think he can be a 3-down running back, but I think he's more of a scat back type. If you're the Panthers, think of pairing a Dalvin Cook and Cam Newton together and running some read option. I mean, that sounds like a perfect pairing to me. Dalvin Cook ran out of the shotgun a lot in college, so I think it's a great pairing. This might be a little high for the second running back off the board already in the 8th round, given how deep it is, but I think if you add a playmaker like that, which they haven't really had in a long time. I mean, Jay Stu has been good at times, but he hasn't been elite, and he's always hurt. So I think this would be a great addition to that offense. And he could grow with Cam Newton for years to come. So moving on to number 9, we have the Bengals. I think they could use some O-line help after losing, Wentworth at tackle, and then their guard, I can't remember his name, like Zeitler or something like that. Lost both those guys in free agency. So they could use some O-line help, but at this point I think it's a little high for any of the linemen that are in this draft. It's kind of a weak O-line draft. They could also use a linebacker or some edge help, just a pass rusher. And right here I have Derek Barnett going to them out of Tennessee, the defensive end. A lot of people might look at like a Taco Charlton or something like that would go here, but I think Barnett is a true defensive end, a true pass rusher. I've seen him play against Nebraska in the bowl game, his very last game of college, and his motor is crazy. He just dominated, and he took over the game. And he had as much production as you're going to see in college, basically, there at Tennessee. So I think he'd be a great addition to that Bengals defense. Moving on to number 10, we have the Buffalo Bills, who a lot of people surprisingly have been, well, not surprisingly, but they've been mocking a quarterback to the Bills, which I could see. But I like Tyrod, and I don't know if there's their long-term solution, but I don't think they need to draft a quarterback right now at 10 overall. And I think they need some D-back help, especially after losing Stephon Gilmore. And right now, a corner hasn't even come off the board, so I think the best one is Marshawn Lattimore. And I think they'd be pleasantly surprised if he fell to them, so I think that's who they take at number 10 out of Ohio State. Moving on to the Saints, they could use some defensive help, I think, at defensive back, linebacker, or a wide receiver. But I think just take best player available here and go O.J. Howard out of Alabama, the tight end. Think Jimmy Graham 2.0. I mean, I think he'd be a great pairing with Drew Brees, and they would tear defenses up, and that offense would actually be elite there with Adrian Peterson as well. So I think that'd be actually a great pairing for O.J. Howard. Moving on to number 12, we have the Browns again. And here I think they pick Trubisky out of North Carolina, quarterback. If he falls to them, honestly, I don't know if he'll fall to them here, but I'm not a huge fan, so I have him falling in my mock draft to them. And they had some questions about whether they take him number 1 overall, so obviously I think they take him at 12. Moving on to number 13, we have the Cardinals. I think they could use some linebacker help and maybe some secondary help as well. But I think And they could honestly draft their quarterback of the future here too, but I think it might be a little high. Maybe you could get a guy in the later rounds. But I have Mike Williams going to them, wide receiver out of Clemson. I think he could be the next Larry Fitzgerald type. He's not super fast, but he is a really big guy and a decent route runner. So I think if he learned under Larry Fitzgerald, he could be a great receiver for years to come. And I mean, they've lost Michael Floyd and some others at that position, so I think that'd be a great addition there. Moving on to number 14, we have the Eagles, which they got that pick from the Vikings. Damn it. I think they could use a running back, but I think they need to go defense here. Their defense isn't very good, honestly, in my opinion. And I have them picking corner Tre'Davious White out of LSU. This one was tough because I think there's a handful of corners that are on par with him, like Marlon Humphrey out of Alabama and that other corner out of Ohio State. I'm drawing a blank here. But I like Tre'Davious White here. He and Jamal Adams tore it up in college, and I think he'd be a nice addition to the Eagles secondary, which has struggled in the past. So moving on to number 15, we have the Colts. And I think they should go O-line here. They also could use some defensive line help and maybe a tailback with Frank Gore getting so old. But I think priority has to be protect Andrew Luck, and they still haven't done that very well. So I have them taking Ryan Ramczyk, out of Wisconsin to play tackle. I think he's the best true tackle in this draft. His ceiling might not be as high as like a Cam Robinson, but I think he'd be a sturdy player on that team. And Wisconsin just breeds O-linemen, so I think it'd be a nice fit. If the Colts could trade back, maybe I think that'd be good because I feel like they could find what they're looking for at the offensive line later on. But at that spot, I think Ryan Ramczyk is the way to go. So moving on to 16, we have the Rams. I think they could use some linebacker help, some defensive back help, and some wide receiver help. I have them taking Corey Davis, wide receiver out of Western Michigan. I think he could be the best receiver in this draft. I have Mike Williams going before him, but he was very productive in college, and he's a really good route runner, and I think he'd be really nice pairing with Joe Flacco. And Rashad Perryman and all those guys I have there, those young receivers, so I think that'd be a nice pairing. Moving on to number 17, we have the Redskins. I think they could as well use some linebacker help, just defense in general. They could also use a running back, but I think more urgent need is linebacker, and I have them taking Reuben Foster, the inside linebacker out of Alabama. He was early on talked about as maybe a top 10 type pick, but then he had that whole thing where he had a diluted drug test, I guess, and he said it was just because he was drinking a lot of water or something like that. He said, test me now and I'd be fine. But I think that incident will cause him to slip a little bit, and I think the Redskins would be elated to get him here at 17. I think he's one of the most explosive playmakers in this draft. So moving on to number 18, we have the Tennessee Titans, their second pick in the first round. Like I said before, I think they could still use some secondary help, but they address that with Malik Hooker, so I have them going with wide receiver John Ross, the speedster out of Washington. He ran a 4.22, broke Chris Johnson's record, and the 40 at the combine. And I just see him being a guy that could take the top off defenses and bring those safeties back to allow Derrick Henry and DeMarco Murray and all those guys to run the ball. And he'd just be a great weapon for Mariota to grow with, I think. And they don't really have that true number one receiver. And I don't know if he's who am I thinking of, like an Odell type, but I just think he'd be a burner that could definitely help stretch the defense and help that team out a lot. So moving on to number 19, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Here I was kind of torn because I wanted to go running back, but I actually believe in Doug Martin, even though they don't seem to. I remember just a couple short years ago, he was the second leading rusher in the league. So I don't think they go running back here. They could go secondary, but I have them going defensive line with Taco Charlton, defensive end out of Michigan. It seemed at times last year they had some injury issues and were playing like linebackers, defensive tackle, and D-end. So, I mean, I think they need some depth at the defensive end, and I think Taco Charlton would be a great fit. He's really explosive, really long, so I think he'd be a good fit here. And a guy that I've seen go a lot higher, so I think the Bucs would be pretty happy to take him here. Moving on to the Broncos, not a lot of people have had Christian McCaffrey mocked here. I'm not so sure about that. I could see it, but I like C.J. Anderson, actually. I think their more urgent need would be tackle. I think they need to protect their young quarterbacks, whether it's Simeon or Paxton Lynch. I think they need to protect them for sure, and I have them going with Cam Robinson, the offensive tackle out of Alabama. I think he has the highest ceiling out of any tackle in this draft. He's not a sure thing, but I think he could develop into a Pro Bowl type tackle. So I think that's who they'll go with here at 20. Moving on to 21, we have the Detroit Lions. I think they could use like a true number one. They still haven't really replaced Megatron. I know they have Golden Tate and those guys and Marvin Jones, but they're good receivers, but they're not true number ones. They could also go linebacker. They lost DeAndre Levy, a longtime linebacker there with them. But I have them going with Taka McKinley, the defensive end out of UCLA. I could see him sliding out to linebacker or playing defensive end, but he's just a crazy pass rusher. And if they paired him up with Ziggy Ansah, I think that'd be really nice for them. I know their secondary isn't great, but a way to build on your secondary is to get a great pass rush. So I think that'd be a good pick for them at 21. Moving on to 22, we have the Miami Dolphins. I think they could use some linebacker help, potentially some corner help, and maybe a tailback, although I like Jay Ajayi, so I don't think they go there. I have them going with Forrest Lamp, offensive guard out of Western Kentucky. I think he is the best guard in this draft. He played tackle some in college, but I think he kicks inside and plays guard here. And I think if they want Ryan Tannehill to be their franchise guy, which I'm not convinced that he is, but if they want him to, they got to protect him better. And he can run blocks, so that helped build the JJ. So I think that's the pick here for the Dolphins. Moving on to number 23, we have the New York Giants. And here's one that I haven't seen a lot of people take, and I have Christian McCaffrey going to the Giants. I think they've needed some running back help for a while. I like Rashad Jennings, but I don't think he's explosive enough. And, I mean, think about that offense. You got Odell Beckham, you got Brandon Marshall, and then you'd add McCaffrey with Eli Manning. I think that'd be an explosive offense and make the Giants a contender. They haven't had a really top-notch running back in a long time. They've just had a committee of subpar guys, in my opinion. So I think adding Christian McCaffrey here would set that offense over the top. I know they need some defensive help. I know they could use a left tackle, but I think this would be a great pick for them here and add an explosive player. So moving on, we have the Raiders at 24. I could see them going secondary or defensive line, but I have them going linebacker with Zach Cunningham out of Vanderbilt. I was torn here. I was looking at Hassan Reddick maybe and some other guys, but I just think Cunningham is really explosive and versatile, and I think he'd be a great pairing with Khalil Mack, and they'd grow together for years to come and dominate. I definitely think the Raiders do need to go with the defensive side of the ball. They have a great O-line. Their receiving core is great, and they're adding Marshawn, it looks like. So I think they're actually contenders this year for the Super Bowl. They just need to improve that defense, so I have them taking Cunningham. Moving on to number 25, we have the Texans. This one's really interesting, but I think they have to go quarterback here. I don't think you want to throw Tom Savage out there, even though he looked good at times last year. So I have them taking Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback out of Texas Tech. And like I said earlier, I'm not huge on any of these quarterbacks here, but they always slide way up boards in the draft. It happens every year. Teams want that franchise quarterback, and they might think that a guy's not ready now, but they dream about molding him into the guy they want. So I have them taking Mahomes. They're at 25. If it was like me, I would wait later on and draft a younger guy or a guy in the later rounds, but I think the Texans would be aggressive and take Mahomes here. Moving on to 26, we have the Seattle Seahawks. I struggled with this one because I wanted to go defensive tackle because I think they need some defensive tackle help. I also was looking at offensive tackle because they haven't protected Russell Wilson very well in recent years. But I went with Jabril Peppers, cornerback out of Michigan. And I know today came out that he had a similar thing as Reuben Foster as far as the diluted drug test or whatever. I guess there was a lot of water in it, but he said it was just because he drank a lot after training at the combine or something like that, or after the flight, something along those lines. So I think that might cause him to slide, but if you're the Seahawks here, you just got to think about all the different things this kid can do. He's super versatile, and I know they've been talking about maybe trading Sherman, so if you had a kid like him, maybe you could do that then. But I think Pete Carroll could throw this guy in his defense and add another guy to the Legion of Boom and to make that defense even better. Next, we have the Kansas City Chiefs at 27. Here, I think there's a couple different ways you could go. A lot of people have them take a quarterback. I think they should wait until later on to do that. So I have them taking Hassan Reddick, linebacker out of Temple. He's a really explosive guy, a guy I didn't really know about until I looked into it. But they have Derek Johnson, who's like 34 or something at linebacker that's getting old. And, I mean, Tom Bahali and Justin Houston are getting old. So I think they could use a guy that can pass rush which Reddick can very well, and it can also play linebacker. So I think he'd be a great addition to that defense. Moving on to 28, we have the Dallas Cowboys. Here, the Cowboys, I'm actually looking forward to what they're going to do this year. They have a lot of options, but I think they have to go defensive back. They lost, feels like, everyone that played in their defensive secondary last year. So I think a guy that makes perfect sense for the Cowboys is Adoree Jackson. All sorts of things. He can return kicks, he can return punts, and he's just kind of the flashy guy that I feel like Jerry Jones loves to have. They play him at corner, maybe some safety, but he's just a playmaker in general, so I like him a lot. Moving on to 29, we have the Packers. F the Packers, but we got them on the draft, so we got to pick for them. I think they really need corner help, maybe a pass rusher, but I have them going running back here, and this is pretty controversial, but I have them going Joe Mixon. I think if he didn't have the off-season issues or the off-field issues that he did, he might be the number 1 or number 2 running back in this class. And it all depends really on the interviews that the Packers had with him. I don't know if they even did. I should have looked into that, but I'm assuming they've talked to him at the draft. If he seems like he's a high-character guy, which obviously he's shown that he's not, but that he can learn from what he's done and never even think about doing something like that again, and make sure he knows that if he does something like that again, he's gone. I think they might go with him here because if you think about it, think of Aaron Rodgers paired with a running back like that. He's super explosive. I think it'd put that offense over the top and make them instant Super Bowl contenders, which I think they already are, but it just add another level to that offense. So I have them going Joe Mixon at 29. At 30, we have the Steelers. I think they could use some linebacker help, maybe another wide receiver to pair with Antonio Brown. But I have them going tight end with David Njoku, I think his name is. The tight end on Miami, he's super explosive, and the Steelers haven't had a true great tight end since Heath Miller left. So I think if you add this guy, I hate saying his name, Njoku. It's actually a cool name. I just can't pronounce it. If you add Njoku to the Steelers, I think that'd be nuts because he's super explosive, and if you add a weapon like that over the middle, that just makes Antonio Brown all the more explosive, and Le'Veon Bell and those guys, so that would make that offense arguably one of the best in the NFL. So at number 31, we have the Chokesters, the Falcons. I think they need some defensive help. I mean, you let Tom Brady score 25 points in a couple quarters. Probably need some help in the secondary. Sorry, Falcons fans, I'm taking shots at you. But I would go with Budda Baker, safety out of Washington. He's a little on the smaller side, but I think of a guy like Tyrann Mathieu. I just think he's a playmaker. He's pretty rangy and is a good cover safety, which I think they need a lot of help at. So I'd add him, and that offense is still elite. So the Falcons I could see being right back where they were, contending for a Super Bowl. They might regress a little bit, but we'll see. And then moving on at number 32, as a result of the trade for Brandon Cooks with the Patriots, we have the Saints again. And I'm going to get some slack for this for not having the Saints draft corner or like any defense in the first or in their top two picks, but I have them going to Deshaun Kaiser, quarterback out of Notre Dame. I think he might have the most upside in this draft. Honestly, he's a big boy coming off some injury issues, but I think Drew Brees, he's still playing at an elite level, but he's getting old. I think he's like 38 or something like that. So I think his time is sort of nearing an end, and if he could have Kaiser sit behind him for a couple of years and learn, I think he'd be really good. And then the Saints, I mean, I know they need corner help, but I feel like there's a ton of quality corners left in this draft that I've done. So I think they could address that in the second round. So that completes the mock draft. A couple observations, a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of running backs for the first round. But I just think that's the way the draft is heading this year, and it'll make for an interesting second round because there'll still be a lot of quality corners and secondary pieces, I think, and a lot of quality linemen because there weren't a ton taken in the first round. So it was set up for a really interesting second round. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe if you did and give this video a like. I put a lot of time and effort into it. I did a lot of research. But yeah, subscribe because I'm going to be doing draft grades for each team after the draft, and we'll be doing nothing but off-season stuff until the season starts, and then it'll be awesome because we'll have stuff to talk about all the time. I love fantasy football. I'll do that every week. I'll do some fantasy football videos prior to the season to get you ready for your drafts, so stay tuned for that. But subscribe to get all that content and more. I want to hear your thoughts on this draft, so comment below on your team or any team really. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, why. I just like talking with you guys. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you later. Peace.